Hello everyone, do you want to know if a servant is good enough to spend your hard-earned quartz on? Great! Then allow me to give you the information necessary for it. Today's topic servant in the Gacha guide is the King of Warriors himself, Sigurd. We will be covering the points that you see on screen, so let's go ahead and jump into his stats right away. Sigurd is a 5-star single-target saber-class servant, meaning he does extra damage against lancers and is weak to archers. He has 12,465 attack at level 90, making him the highest attack-statted saber in the entire game. Or single target, well yeah, actually, highest in all sabers. And his HP is 13,975, which is around average for a saber overall. So, pretty good stats. His hidden stats show us that his NP gain per hit is 0.62%. Ooh, that's the background. 0.62%. A little bit above the average, so that's helpful. As for his cards, he has 4 hits on his quick, 3 on his arts, 2 on his buster, 5 on his extra attack, and 7 hits on his noble phantasm. Decent hit counts overall. His star weight, aka how easy it is to get critical stars on him, how much priority he has, is 97, which is around the average overall. His star creation rate is at 10%, which is also around the average, but is helped a little bit by his higher hit count on his quick card. Now, moving on to his deck in Noble Phantasm, he is rocking our very standard 2-1-2 deck with 2 Buster cards, 2 Arts cards, and 1 Quick card. His Noble Phantasm, Bulwark Graham, Heaven's Wheel of Destruction, is a single-target Buster Noble Phantasm that deals damage to 1 enemy, and deals extra damage against dragon enemies based on your overcharge for between 150% and 200% bonus damage. Overall, it's an extremely simple NP with not much going for it other than it's really good at killing dragons. Next up, his passives. He comes with Magic Resistance A for 20% extra debuff resist, Riding A for 10% increased quick card effectiveness, and Divinity B for 175 damage plus. Honestly, none of this is all that impactful. Riding would be a fantastic skill if he had more than 1 quick card to work with, but as he only has 1, it's not terribly relevant. Unfortunate for him. Let's move on to his skills then, shall we? First off, we have Primordial Rune Warrior. This is a 3-hit buff that increases his critical strength between 50 and 100% and lasts for 3 turns. Again, this is only a 3-hit buff, it is not a 3-turn buff. So you've only got 3 hits to make use of it, which makes it far weaker than what you would think it would be for a lasting 3 turns. Up next, we have Dragonkind Modification. This is a 1-turn self-buster buff between 30 and 50% based on level, which also gives him a 1-time Guts application for 3 turns, which will restore him to 1,000 health if he is killed. Not particularly amazing for the Guts, but the Buster buff for 1 turn is very good. 50% is quite high. Moving on, with his final skill, he has Crystallization of Wisdom. This is an ally targetable buff that lasts for 1 turn, which increases his critical star drop rate between 50 and 100%, and applies a nullified debuff for 1 turn. Which means that if you have an allied servant that debuffs themselves when they use a skill, for example, Iliasfeel, who debuffs herself after her Noble Phantasm, you can throw this onto her and it will nullify that. So what materials do we need to level up these skills? I got good news, everybody. This boy is pretty easy peasy. He takes 15 horseshoes, 36 dragon fangs, 11 reverse dragon scales, and 24 of one of the new materials, Ring of the Giants. Other than the rings, these are all pretty old materials, and you don't need a very large amount of any of them. Altogether, to max them out, it'll cost you 45 horseshoes, 108 dragon fangs, 33 reverse dragon scales, and 72 rings of the giants. Again, the one that is going to be the hardest one to get for most of us is the new one, the Rings of the Giants. If you're a newer player, then it's probably going to be these reverse dragon scales, but luckily they show up relatively often. So all in all, pretty easy to level his skills. So how does he stack up against other servants of his class? As a single target 5-star saber, his main competition comes down to Okita Soji, Nero Bride, and Musashi Miyamoto. Unfortunately, Sigurd is kind of the lowest on the totem pole in everything aside from his ability to deal critical hit damage when compared to his 5-star companions. His Noble Phantasm damage is actually quite low, almost being beat out by 4-star Yagyu Munenori. That is, unless you're facing a dragon. Against a dragon, he then shoots up to the highest damage out of all of them by far, even accounting for any of their own special effects on their Noble Phantasms. So you can see where his niche lies. This man is a Dragon Slayer first and foremost. If you are not facing a dragon, he is going to be beat out by any of his competition. If you are facing a dragon, then he is the man for the job. So, in my personal opinion, Sigurd is lacking. Quite honestly. His skills aren't amazing, his NP and star gain aren't anywhere near as good as his competition, such as Okita or Musashi. And his base damage or effects are nothing particularly special when talking about his NP. However, if you need a Dragon Slayer, he's the best man for the job. He is 100% amazing at slaying anything with the dragon trait on it. He's a very niche option and only good at one thing, so that causes him to fall short of your more diverse options that are currently available and which come in the future. But if this is a man you want to roll for and you have rolled for Sigurd, let's look at which skills to prioritize in leveling. I would suggest you start off with his second skill, Dragonkind Modification, due to it just giving him a raw Buster buff, which will help out with his NP and 2 of his cards. And then I would probably follow it up with the Primordial Rune skill for the increased critical strength, which can give you 3 very powerful hits. And finally, Crystallization of Wisdom isn't particularly amazing. It's merely a critical star drop rate for 1 ally for only 1 turn. It's a pretty weak skill, all things considered. The debuff nullification is okay now and again, but otherwise you're mostly using it for the crit star drop rate up, and there are other servants with better versions of this skill, party-wide versions of this skill, that last 3 turns. So, level that if you want, start off with his second, move on to his first. Those 2 are relatively similar in priority, and his third one you can basically forget about if you don't really care about it. Now, let's go over craft essences to equip this man with. He is best used as a Dragon Slayer. He works pretty decently as a critical damage dealer, and okay at Buster card nuking due to it. So the main things to look for are Buster ups, crit damage ups, critical star gather ups. Those are your focus. So first off, for our examples, we have Joint Recital. Joint Recital gives us a 20% Buster up and 20% critical damage up. Next off, we have Victor of the Moon, very similar to Joint Recital, but one ACE that is something you can actually get nowadays. Joint Recital is an older one that's not available anymore. And Victor of the Moon will give you 15% Buster up and 25% critical damage up. Little bit more on the crit damage up, little less on the Buster. Next up, we have Conversation on the Hot Sands, which gives us a 600% critical star absorption and 20% critical damage up. And finally, a CE that is coming out in the upcoming anniversary, so very shortly, A Tale of Love and Hope. This will give you 200% more critical star absorption, 15% critical damage up, and 60% starting NP gauge. All of these are 4 good examples. There are other examples out there. You'll just have to search on a wiki for, again, critical damage up, critical star gather up, and Buster up. Those are the 3 things to focus on. Now, what servants should we pair this guy with? Oh, look, it's Waver. He made the list again. Waver has, of course, a 50% MP charge up, and attack up, and critical damage up, so it's a no-brainer. Moving on, we have Merlin, our reliable big boy Buster support, who can give him a little bit of charge and attack up, and with his hero creation, can help Sigurd do some big damage with his Buster crits. And finally, we have a most unusual support that you're not going to see very often, Georgios. Now, this guy is on here because with his Noble Phantasm, he adds the Dragon trait to any enemy that he targets it with. This combines with Sigurd to almost double Sigurd's Noble Phantasm damage. It's an extremely powerful combo. Georgios himself is a pretty good taunting tank that can take the aggro for a couple of turns as well, so he's not even that bad to take with you. Georgios is honestly one of the best supports you can bring with Sigurd, because he turns whatever you're facing into something Sigurd is quite good at killing. Now, that being said, you do have to bring a 2-star with you, so the flexibility of this guy, again, not great. So, Too Long Didn't Watch here, not a great role. Sigurd's great at slaying dragons, but otherwise he's not amazing. He pairs well with Georgios to help reach that weakness, but then you have to take a 2-star that can dilute your card pool, and doesn't provide any buffs aside from that. He has strong crits, but most of his buffs are just 1 turn, and 1-turn buffs aren't good because of break bars. So, with every upside that you can point out for him, there's also a bit of a downside with, well, one major exception. There is absolutely one thing that is always going to be an upside for this man, and that is, of course, that he is voiced by Seto Kaiba. And we all know how everyone likes Seto Kaiba.
You're a third-rate duelist with a fourth-rate deck.
As the man says. Oh wait, that's English Kaiba. He's voiced by Japanese Kaiba, but close enough. Anyway, let me know your opinions on Seto Sigurd. And if you enjoyed this video, follow me on Twitch. See these recorded live. And they were too quiet. You know what? I'll give one more for you. I'll give one more for everyone.
You're a third-rate duelist with a fourth-rate deck.
There you go. Now you have to roll for him. I'm sorry. You got to roll for this guy that's not very good. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this was informative for you. See you on the next Gacha Guide.